Hi, welcome to Don Ross Therapeutic Yoga Movement Moment for April. This month we're going to look at the core and core stability. So what I'd like you to do is find a comfortable seated position, one where you're able to feel both your sitting bones on the chair surface that you're seated on, and that you can feel the 3 points, the center of the heel, the mound of the big toe, and the mound of the pinky on the floor. So if the feet don't sit nicely on the floor, just put something underneath your feet to bring the floor up to meet you so that you can feel both feet flat and firm on the floor. Now, if in this seated position the spine isn't easy and you find that there's a lot of tension or holding in through the hips or the belly, you can do this exploration laying down as well. So I'd invite you to, if you're experiencing any tension through the spine or holding in the low belly or the hips, just move yourself down onto the floor, knees bent, feet on the floor, just laying on your back. So whichever position you're in, seated or supine, notice your breath. So simply notice the inhale and the exhale. And notice the pauses that follow the inhale, and then the pause that comes at the end of the exhale. So these are the 4 phases of our breath. The inhale and exhale are our actively engaged phases, and the pauses are our passively engaged phases. So simply notice your phases for the next few breaths. Get a sense and feel for the pace of each of the phases of breath. So if there is a phase that's lacking or dormant today, if there's a sense of rushing in any of the phases, or that one phase is longer than another. Good, and then I'd also like you to consider the feel or texture of each of the phases of your breath. So feel is all about texture. So this idea of, does the phase feel thin or thick, warm or cool, smooth or jagged? Let's take a moment to notice each of the phases of your breath. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do whatever it means to you when I say draw the belly button towards the spine or pull in through your navel. Okay, and now I'd like you to take a moment and just notice the phases of your breath here again. And notice if the breath has become held or constricted as a result of the cue that I offered. Okay? And my guess is that for most of you, you will have noticed that your breath became held or constricted, and it was less easeful. So I want to just talk about that a little bit, because this idea of drawing the belly button towards the spine or drawing in through the navel came about as a way to have us access or engage our transverse abdominis. And the problem with it is that we go too hard. And so when we affect or limit, restrict the breath in any way, we also inhibit the ability for the transverse abdominis to engage effectively. And the reason for this is that the fibers of the primary breathing muscle, which is our diaphragm, and it sits underneath our rib cage, and on the inhale it descends, and on the exhale it lifts back up. So this free and easy, supple movement with our breath and of the diaphragm, when the breath becomes restricted or limited at all, the fibers of the transverse abdominis actually interweave with the diaphragm. And so when the breath or diaphragm becomes limited or held, so does the transverse abdominis. And the other problem with that is that then when one of our stabilizing muscles, our deeper core muscles, which is the transverse abdominis, becomes held or restricted, then there's an over-engagement of our power muscles. And the power muscles in this case that become overengaged are our rectus abdominis and our obliques. And the reason this is a problem is because they're not intended to stabilize. So when we have the power muscles doing the work of the stabilizing muscles, they actually become weaker, because then when we need to recruit them for power, they're tired and it's just less effective. So I just want to offer this idea that as you do your core work over the next couple of weeks, consider the fact of how it's impacting your breath. And that if your breath is held or limited as you're working with your core, whether that's through fitness exercises or yoga asana, that you actually are making your core weaker. And that when a body is functioning well, the core just naturally emerges and is evoked, rather than us having to engage and in effect choking out our core. So I just wanted to start a conversation about this, give you some food for thought, something to play with. You can check back in the middle of the month to my website, www.dawnross.ca, where I'll have some anatomical pictures and some more discussion just around the core and the whole effective use and how to train and develop a supple, stable core from the inside out. So thanks so much for joining me. If this has spurred on any questions or comments as you practice with this idea of breath and core over the next couple of weeks, fire me off an email, yogadon@shaw.ca. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.